time in school. I did 12 years.
The box has to be yours. The back is Happy New Year. Just one moment. I'm not getting the email I need for the presentation. So. We got the consultant here.
We're working on the technical difficulty right now.
Yes.
Yes. I, thank you. Does anyone need an agenda? We're not quite ready. Just one moment.
I'd like to bring the Planning Commission meeting to order. And we'll start by
How about a roll call?
taking a roll call. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Here.
Commissioner Willers.
Here.
Commissioner Wyrick.
Here.
Vice Chair Barbos.
Here.
And Chair Barnett.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, and I think we ought to do a approval of the agenda. Is there any changes? We just have one item on the agenda tonight.
I think we need a pledge, Mr. Chair.
We're going to do that next.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I'm following the way they have it listed on the paper.
My mistake.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, you're like the chair in training here. Do we need a formal motion to approve the agenda?
Yes.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes.
Commissioner Willers.
Yes.
Commissioner Wyrick.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett. Sorry, Vice
Yes.
Chair Barbos and
Yes.
Chair Barnett. Excuse me.
I knew you meant.
Yes. Okay, with 5-0, we've approved the agenda. Now we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Nugent, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I would be delighted to.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we have any correspondence?
Yes, all the correspondence that has been received regarding the housing element has been uploaded to the document center.
Okay, thank you. Tonight we only have one item on the agenda. It's a public hearing to discuss and to take possible action to recommend to the City Council the adoption of the City of Sonoma's 6-cycle housing plan, background report, and CEQA notice exemption. Just as to place it into context, we're facing a state deadline for submission of our program of the end of January. Normally, we would not submit and adopt a plan or suggest a recommendation of adoption of a plan without reviewing the state's recommendations. However, the state has not responded yet to us with its recommendations. We're one of the few cities, actually, in a very small minority, who have actually submitted our housing element for the state to review. And it takes them roughly 90 days to review it. And the timing is such that we're faced with the situation of either recommending an adoption by the City Council by the end of this month or being in violation of state law. Hence, this is a special meeting that has been called to provide the city and its approval process to conform with public noticing provisions, and also the opportunity, if the council so chooses, to adopt the planning, housing element, which once we get the state's comments, can be amended in the future. So with that preliminary remark, I turn it over to our able city staff to make the report.
Thank you, Chair Barnett. And that concludes my staff report. You did an excellent job. I would just like to add that the housing element was available for a public review for 37 days, beginning on August 10th through September 16th. Staff inadvertently created 2 housing element document center folders on the city's website, and only one folder was sent to the consultant to address the comments. But now the housing consultant, thank you very much, has all of the comments, and they will be addressing all of the comments by the city council meeting on July 31st. I'm here tonight.
January 31st.
Sorry, thank you, January 31st. Got to keep an eye on me tonight. I'm here tonight with Perry Banner from DeNova Planning Group, and he's going to now run through the short presentation on the housing element. I would just add that the sixth cycle housing element is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guideline, section 15061. So that concludes my staff report, and I'll turn it over to Perry. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Members of the Planning Commission, it's great to be here with you tonight. I had the pleasure of delivering a similar presentation via Zoom in August, if I recall correctly, so I think I recognize a couple of faces. Maybe you might recognize me. Well, look a little different on camera, I'm sure. So tonight, we're bringing back the housing element that you kind of previewed back in August. This is in anticipation of an adopted document that will hopefully be certified by HCD in short order. It's been a long process. We're glad that we're approaching the finish line. To give you a sense of the project timeline, as I mentioned, and as Wendy mentioned, the document was up for public review back in August and September. That's when we gave the Planning Commission a little taste of what was in the document. The document was sent off to the Department of Housing and Community Development for their review. They have been taking the full 90 days in most jurisdictions to review that document. So timing-wise, we expect, well, they have a deadline for comments of January 21st. It's not ideal that we're presenting to the Planning Commission tonight in this manner, but you're not alone in this situation. Other, not just jurisdictions within your Council of Government regions, but also Southern California, San Diego, they're all experiencing the same sort of thing. But just like we indicated back in August, we told you that we would have this document to the Planning Commission in early 2003. Here we are, and to the City Council by the end of the month. If you recall, and I think that there's some new phases on the Planning Commission. So this housing element document, which, I'll let you know, is a required element of the general plan. And this particular six-cycle housing element really consists of two parts and some appendices. The first part, the housing plan, is kind of lays out the goals, the policies, and how all these programs related to how the city is going to handle housing over the planning period, how that will be implemented. The second part, the background report, is all the analysis that led us to the housing plan and to those implementation programs. We did a housing needs assessment. We looked at constraints, governmental and non-governmental. We looked at all the resources that the city has at its disposal, including the sites that are available for development of housing. And what was new to the housing element cycle was a very robust analysis of fair housing and how the city is affirmatively furthering fair housing. So how do we meet Sonoma's housing needs? Just to give you some background, as you're probably aware, Sonoma is part of the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG, and that Council of Governments, which represents the Bay Area region, at the beginning of this process, going into this new planning period, ABAG would develop a methodology for distributing the region's housing needs across all jurisdictions, cities and counties that are within that ABAG region. And this methodology changes every planning period. You'll often there'll be a period of time when cities will be able to contest the numbers that they've been allocated. And in this particular housing cycle, you would have noticed that Sonoma received twice as much of an allocation as it did in the last housing cycle. And that's not unusual. I've seen cities in urban areas that are receiving 3 and 4 times as many. So the pain is being distributed across California. So what this regional housing needs allocation then is each jurisdiction must then come up with a plan, its housing element, for how it's going to accommodate that allocation. And that's your housing element. So for this particular planning period, it goes from 2023 to 2031. It's an 8-year period. and the city has 311 units assigned to it that it must accommodate. And by accommodate, I mean that the city doesn't need to build 311 units, but it needs to set the table to make sure that developments of housing can occur. And we do that by making sure that there's land available, we identify sites, and we also make sure that there's zoning and that is in place that can allow that development to occur. And it's not just 311 market rate units, it's spread across all income groups. So we need to provide housing for very low income individuals and also for moderate income individuals, and then above moderate or market rate housing. Looks like a complex chart, and it's very small on the monitors, I know, but I'll sort of step you through how we arrive at the numbers that we need to accommodate in the housing element. So as I mentioned, that the top row is the allocation that was given to us by ABAG. But in this process, the city was allowed to take some credits for projects that were being constructed, maybe had been entitled, weren't under construction just yet, or these were pending projects. So that reduced that allocation number. We were able to subtract those pending projects or projects under construction from our allocation. But we were left with the remaining RHNA, and we had to find sites in order to do that. The good thing about Sonoma is that there's a lot of vacant land. You're not an urban city and not a built-out city. We did have to look at underutilized sites to sort of close the gap, but we relied pretty heavily on sites that were fully vacant, that allowed for residential development already, and that could accommodate residential development at all income levels. So we could do affordable housing on one site and market rate housing on another. And in fact, Sonoma, you had the advantage of having excess capacity. So we were able to identify a surplus of sites. On this chart, you might notice that there's some edits that are done to the tables. We presented this table to the Planning Commission back in August. There was another assembly bill that came and that needed to be implemented. This assembly bill allows for residential development on commercial sites, allows for affordable housing on on commercial sites. It's AB 2011. So we made some adjustments to this chart. We were actually able to have accommodate additional units, so we had even more capacity to accommodate our RHNA, and that's what the edits sort of reflect. This map, it might not be super easy to see how the sites are distributed on the city's zoning map, but and I'm going to show you another map that maybe does a better job of that. The point here, I think, is that we wanted to show distribution across a number of different zones in the city, and that the distribution of the sites isn't concentrated in any one area. It's actually spread throughout Sonoma, which is a good thing, and which is exactly what HCD is looking for. So we wanted to just quickly address a couple of other edits that were made to the document, and in particular some public comments. Now I know that Wendy already sort of clarified a little error that was made. We're addressing that right now. So there is an Appendix E to the housing element that dealt with a batch of public comments, and not just copying them and attaching them to the document, but actually going into the housing element and addressing where we could and make changes. So what we'll do, we'll do that with the remainder of the comments before it goes to the City Council. So everything will get addressed, and there'll be a more comprehensive set of public comments in that Appendix E. And then I touched a little bit on Assembly Bill 2011 already. So those revisions, in a positive way, they gave us some excess or additional surplus when it came to our sites inventory. Back in August, we went into a little bit more detail as far as the housing programs that are in your housing element. I won't go into that level of specificity tonight, but what I do want to say is that since August, we've made some revisions to those housing programs. We've got an understanding of what HCD is looking for. This cycle, when it comes to the housing programs, they want very specific objectives on these housing programs. but they're also holding the city's feet to the fire in the sense that they want details and specificity on timeline, how it's going to be implemented. So we try to get ahead of that a little bit and make sure that the programs that are outlined in the housing element have very firm timelines. I won't read this verbatim, but I'll try to pick out a couple of highlights. Program 1, for example, was revised to ensure that inclusionary units that are being developed will be affordable in perpetuity. Sometimes they have a 45 or 55-year horizon. These ones will be affordable in perpetuity. Program 13 was revised to develop a rental ADU and SB 9 registry. Like I say, we accommodated two recent bills, 2011, or Assembly Bill 2011 and Senate Bill 6. And then we made some revisions with regard to the affordable housing overlay to incentivize development of sites with affordable housing and to provide for increased densities and a greater variety of housing types on lots with potential multifamily housing. If you have any other questions about any program in particular, I can answer that during the question period. Also, in the background report, we made a modification to Table 39 to identify the city's below market rate units in addition to assisted multifamily units. And as I mentioned, for this housing element cycle, a whole new chapter was created, affirmatively furthering fair housing, which was only touched on very minimally in previous housing element cycles. It's the one section in the housing element that's just filled with graphics, a lot of maps showing the distribution of sites and how they relate to any sort of patterns of income segregation or patterns of access to opportunity. It's probably the most colorful section in the housing element, but here's where we made, since August, some pretty significant changes to the document. And actually, to give you a little sampling, in this, as I mentioned, these are probably better maps that show the distribution of the sites in the sites inventory. So you can see that they are kind of spread out through Sonoma. But these are the types of maps that you find in that fair housing section. The map on the left shows how diverse the city is in terms of race and ethnicity. And the map on the right shows what we call access to opportunity. Blue being an area in the city where there's what we would call the highest resource, green, moderate resource, and then the beige or the yellow, kind of a more lower resource areas. And there's factors that go into what makes an area more resourceful than others, and then I can get into those details if you have questions on them. So a quick update on the timeline, which in a way we've already discussed. As Vice Chair? Chair, rather. As Chair mentioned, the document is due January 2023, this month. There was, of course, the public review period. Comments were due back in September. The housing element was sent off to HCD for their 90-day review period. Here we are in January with the adoption hearings, and of course, we'll go to City Council on the 31st of this month. And all along the way, there's been opportunity for the community to review the document and to have some public engagement with staff, with consultants regarding the housing element. Now, I want to make sure that I have the Planning Commission recommendation correct, so maybe give it
That looks great.
that looks great. There was some discussion about the right wording for the.
Just to consider that.
Oh,
Just in case, we might want to read the reso.
okay.
That is
Oh,
Is that exactly?
sorry, what was that, David?
Yes, that's correct. That's
Okay.
how
Yes.
it's written in the.
Yes, recommend the City
Okay.
Council adopt the City of Sonoma 6th Cycle Housing Plan and Background Report and CEQA Notice of Exemption.
Perfect. That's phone going off, unfortunately, but and I think I'll end the presentation there and take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Just curious, with the revisions that are being made in the housing element now as a result of the duplicate reports, does that change our submission to the state?
So I think you're talking about the public comments. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
So, no, that won't change what we've submitted to the state already. So what will happen is once there's been a set of comments that have already been addressed and that are incorporated into the document that you see before you. There's another set of comments that I don't know if they've had a chance to see. I don't think they have just yet.
Yes.
But those are going to get addressed and incorporated into the version that the City Council is going to see on the 31st. So what we'll do at that point is send the adopted housing element back to HCD for certifications. So the adopted document that HCD sees is going to have all the public comments kind of comprehensively put into Appendix E and addressed in the document. So by the time the document hits the City Council and then HCD, there'll be no two files or duplication or anything to that effect.
Great, and it means we've met the timeline as well.
Correct.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Other questions? If I have discovered typos or information that's incorrect, when would you like and how would you like that information given to you?
You can send it as soon as possible. We'll try to get it incorporated into the version that the City Council is going to see.
Yes, you can send it to Wendy if you have it through email. You can send it to her directly, and then we'll make sure that it gets to the consultant to get included.
Okay, thank you.
And those should be easy enough to address if they're typos.
No, and these
yeah.
are easy corrections. They're either factually incorrect in an expression of a percentage
Got it.
or a misspelled word in a table,
Okay,
things like that.
perfect.
Anything further in terms of questions? No? Okay. Thank you, sir.
you.
Some questions may come up from the public, so
Excellent.
if you're going to stick around for a while, that would be great.
Be right here.
Okay. At this point, let me open up the discussion to the public. Comments of the public or questions that you may have, now's the time to do it.
Right, so this is a public hearing, so the public hearing is open.
I'll do this. That makes it official.
Yes, and we do have a couple of folks on Zoom that would like to comment.
Okay, it doesn't look like at the moment, oh, well, we do have someone. Come on up. Please give us your name and address just for the record.
Yeah, I'm Diane Lumiere at 113 Merida Drive in Sonoma, California. I always have this question, and I'm going to repeat it again. Is there zoning allowable now for manufactured or modular homes in an ADU kind of setting, or a fourplex, or a twoplex in this plan?
Yes. Sorry, through the chair, yes.
Please.
Yes. And how are those designated?
Well, a modular home is a type of building that's allowed anywhere in the city with a building permit, provided you meet setback requirements and any design review requirements.
Right, but I guess my question is there a capacity for, say, an investor to come in and put in 6 to 10 modular homes or manufactured homes in these lots designated?
Yes, with the use permit.
With a use
Yes.
permit. So is that a change, or is that a rezoning? That's not a rezoning anymore?
No, it's not a change. It's always been allowed.
Okay. Really?
Yes, there's a project on Sonoma Highway that is
I know,
proposing
that's
that.
fabulous, yeah. So that's not an exception, that wasn't,
Well, they do need, that project as proposed will need some type of an exception to the side yard setbacks.
Okay.
But it's going to be reviewed by the planning commission at some point next year, or this year.
right. And in this plan also, there's no mention of annexing land or doing anything like that in the city. That's way down the pike,
Right.
right?
No plans to annex.
Thank
Can I just get a point of clarification on there? Because you mentioned both manufactured and modular, and those are treated quite differently. So that would address the modular, but what about manufacturing?
Well, there are probably different building code requirements for those two different types of structures, but both would be permitted, subject to meeting the setback, development code requirements and building permit.
And then just one more since I'm up here. I know that you modified your objective standards on the Planning Commission since we met here months and months ago. Is there some definition somewhere of how what those standards look like now?
Yes, if you'd like to email me, I'm happy to send them to you. I'm Wendy Atkins, and my email is on the website.
Okay.
Please feel free to reach out to me, and I can get you all the information that you could ever want.
And is that, was that an attempt to what's my use here? Was that an attempt to make future development consistent with existing neighborhoods, or is that a different subject?
Well, I think the intent was to eliminate subjective standards. So we want to have objective standards,
Right.
so it doesn't leave things up to interpretation.
Okay, and that's very clear for the public to understand.
I sure hope so.
Me too. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
Yes, we have a couple of members on Zoom,
Okay,
and Caitlin Cornwell would like to speak,
okay,
and I'm going to go ahead and allow her to speak.
okay.
And I'm going to go ahead, Caitlin.
Okay. Good evening, Planning Commission. Thanks for the opportunity. First, I just wanted to say that Sonoma Valley Collaborative, who I'm representing this evening, the cross-sector coalition, submitted a really detailed comment letter on the draft housing element, and we are very pleased at how many of our requests were incorporated into the current revised version. It's very gratifying to the members of the coalition who are really desperate to see Sonoma be more accessible to people who make moderate and low incomes. I think you're in a very difficult position with regard to the timing and dealing with HCD's timelines. And as Perry said, you're not alone in that, but it is hard to figure out the best approach there. I want to just say that our members have really been kind of grappling with the fact that it's very hard to make units in the city of Sonoma be affordable to people unless they are subsidized. It's hard to, because Sonoma is so desirable. And so we've talked to nonprofit housing developers about what makes their projects possible. And one of the main things they say is they need bigger sites, they need exemptions and waivers of things like impact fees and parking requirements and height limits and setbacks. And I just want to urge you on behalf of our members to keep looking for opportunities to make those exceptions. And you've done a lot of that already in the draft, but that's what Sonoma will need to make the future affordable for families and lower income people. Thank you, and we will make more comments as the process goes on.
Thank you, Caitlin. And Wendy, do we have one other person you said?
Yes, Caitlin Weeks would like to speak. Go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioner Barnett, Commissioners, staff. My name is Callum Weeks. I'm the Policy Director with Generation Housing. I just wanted to first acknowledge and thank both the staff and consultant for the transparency around how they integrated public comments into the housing element. The level of detail was actually far better than what we've seen thus far in the county, and I just want to acknowledge that and start by thanking you so much for committing to that level and that degree of transparency in this process. It's very important. That said, I would second the comments that were made by there are some really good things in the housing element that we're very excited to see. The vacant parcel tax, the seeking the pro-housing designation, all of those will definitely set Sonoma on a direction and path towards achieving our mutually shared goals for, more sustainability and vitality in downtown and in just the entire city of Sonoma. That said, I would just also like to really uplift and encourage that the comments of Fred Alabac, especially as it pertains to addressing patterns of segregation, really be thoroughly contemplated and integrated as much as possible. If there's opportunities to further explore that and see if we can actually make some pretty significant strides in reversing some of those patterns, which is, I would argue, evidenced by the existence of Boys Hot Springs and the population there. So if staff could take a stab at that and see if there's other ways we could potentially explore programs that would reverse that or things that we can do to work collaboratively, that would be most appreciated, and I'd be delighted to work with you as well to kind of noodle on some solutions that we could devise and implement together. So with that, I will close my comments and again, just thank you for your work on this and wish you the very best and have a wonderful evening.
Okay, thank you very much.
No further public comment?
Okay, and anyone else wish to make any public comment? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for comments, opinions, philosophy, points of view.
How about a motion?
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Just a quick comment. I just wanted to thank the consultant. I was also very impressed at the level of detail that was contained within and the way that it was public comments were responded to. I felt that column, the way that they were divided into columns in, referencing what specifically was said, and then how that was ameliorated or reflected in the revisions made perfect sense to me, and I thank you for that.
Others? Steve? Anyone? Well, I have a few. Oh.
I was just going to mention one thing.
Yes.
Just to add on to staff and the consultant. Just to let you know that in terms of HCD comments, we do have a meeting this week with our HCD reviewer. So I just wanted to let you know we do have that on Thursday. And we'll probably get some early feedback, which is good. Their deadline is the 24th, so they probably won't give us anything in writing till the 24th, but at least we'll get a heads up. And so by then, the 24th, we'll have a little time there for the consultant to look at those comments, for the staff to look and kind of do a little summary so that we'll make sure, and if there's anything we can go ahead and incorporate, that makes sense, that's smaller, minor, we would do that before the 31st. So I just want to let you know, and if it looks like they're not substantial changes or anything like that, we would definitely, make it available to the Planning Commission as well, so you can see what we've received and what our summary is. So,
thank you. I'm holding out for the expectation that the future will bring an amendment to this housing element. I'll be very surprised if the element that we submit to the state it comes back clean and they say, great, you did everything right. And that's a good thing. I mean, I think the pressure of a deadline which was unrealistic has unnecessarily caused us to go through this action tonight. But I'm gratified by the fact that we can both conform with the technicalities of state law and revise and amend this plan with a further input from the public going forward. So I expect as we get into midpoint of next year, we will have this completely finalized. Let me also say, just in terms of the topics that have come up in conversations I've been having with people, it's important to recognize that the city of Sonoma has basically produced this plan out of sequence with the normal sequence that we have used in the past. That is to say, normally we would do a general plan revision first, in which we looked at the goals and aspirations for the future vision of the city, including rezoning and a number of other things. And that would normally have been the first step in this process. Typically, the housing element would have come after the general plan revision and the vision of the general plan had been produced. For whatever the reasons are, a combination of pandemic and deadline pressures and an incredible flurry of new state laws pertaining to housing, we had to reverse the process. And what that's done is it's created the situation where some kinds of things, like zonings, have been put off into a subsequent process when in reality we might have looked at it preliminarily to doing this plan at all. As it turns out, we didn't have to rezone any properties to accommodate the RHNA numbers, which is positive. On the other hand, it also means that that process of looking at the city and determining whether or not we want to make any changes in the way properties are zoned is still an option and ahead of us as we do the general plan process. So it's a little bit backwards here. And in my experience in the last 30 years of being involved in things like this with the city, I've never seen it happen quite this way. We've always done it in the customary sequence. But here we are, and I think that notwithstanding, we've produced a very good document. And generally, and now I'll just talk about my own personal feelings. This is a technical document to meet the needs of the state's, what I'll refer to with affection, technocratic inclinations, which is to say to reduce everything to charts and numbers and ratios and figures and studies and allocations, which all are in line with the way our Western society tends to orient itself. We're very rational, we're very fact-based, we're very data-based, but it doesn't produce a particularly pleasant human process, or for that matter, with all deference and respect to the consultant, a particularly human document, because the document is designed to meet state technical requirements so they can check off the boxes and say, yes, you have from a rational standpoint, and we are a society that prizes rationality in terms of a thoughtful, organized, segmented, fragmented process of all the pieces, as opposed to a more holistic view of the way human society actually functions. We have successfully done that. I believe that this housing element is substantially compliant with what the state requires, and I don't think we're going to have to make huge changes. I think the consultant's done a very good job. I appreciate all the input from the public. And I'm delighted that, at least from those we heard tonight, they feel that their feelings were well reflected. Ironically, the comment section represents the most human part of this whole thing. It's not the data part. And it's about opportunity and aspiration, what I could, I think, refer to as the subjective judgments, the subjective criteria that we as a human society bring to the process of living together in a community. It's very hard to follow the state's mandate to turn everything to objectified language. Once again, that's a very left-brain sort of organizational methodology, which reduces, and it's a reductionist methodology, reduces the inclination to nuance or what we could refer to as a holistic or organic process by which human societies grow. And housing and the nature of neighborhoods develop and have developed not on the basis of a mandate of corresponding to a chart historically. They've developed in an organic fashion. And unfortunately, the state is forcing us to put aside the nuance, to put aside the subjective judgment, to eliminate words like compatibility or fit or comfort or any of the things that we would normally associate with the human experience of living, and reduce it all down to numbers. In a way, I'd call it the process of turning human beings into interchangeable parts in a housing machine. And the housing machine has its description and its pieces and its parts, and the human beings just slot into it. It's a very industrial sort of a model, but it isn't what I think of as the essence of what it means to be part of a community or the essence of what it means to be a human being. And I'm sorry to see the state tipping over so far in that direction, because it doesn't have much to do with reality. The fact is that we can't compel anyone to build. The state can't compel us to compel anyone to build. We can't compel anyone to live here. People will live here either by choice or by necessity, because that's the way human life operates. And all of this material, which I understand is fulfilling a particular need for the state, has, to me, an air of unreality to it, because it isn't necessarily going to match the way things come down when they finally come to the ground. Most telling for me is that when the state canceled redevelopment agencies' funding in 2011, 2012, they threw the affordable housing baby out with the bathwater. In my 12 years that I was on the city council from 1994 to 2006, it was my pleasure to participate in the approval of one affordable housing project after another. We were able to, on the basis of those forecasted revenues coming into the city, we were able to issue $20 and $30 million bonds to be able to really finance and fund an affordable housing program in the city, to acquire land, which we used to trade and to offer for free to affordable housing developers who frankly need that government subsidy or they won't build it. And we're competing with other communities who want to build affordable housing, and they are, if they have the ability to offer government incentives, subsidies, money, or land to affordable housing developers, those are the cities that will get the projects. If you can't prime that pump as a government, you just don't get the business. And that's the way it is. Now, I really am sorry that the state hasn't funded the mandates, the kind of mandate, because I say they're not forcing the city to build anything. They're saying we need to encourage it. And that's what we've done in this document. We have come up with an encouragement plan. But I would be much happier if the state went back to actually putting its money where its mouth is, not giving lip service to affordable housing, but actually making the funding available to be able to do it again. Because lacking that, it's going to be a very slow and not terribly productive process. So I'll end with this. The sum total of the state's housing policy to me is what I refer to as a trickle-down housing concept. Build as much as you possibly can, the state says, and some of it will make its way down to the bottom. Well, the city of Sonoma already has a 25% inclusionary requirement. The state's requirements, when you read the documentation, is they want us to make sure we get at least 20%. We're ahead. Sonoma has always been a forward-thinking city in regard to affordable housing, and when the money was there, we did it. And the issues of past segregation or economic differences didn't make any difference. Not one affordable housing project that was fully funded and applied for a permit in the city of Sonoma has ever been denied. NIMBYs haven't stopped it. The environmental concerns haven't stopped it. Every project has been approved. If it had the money, if it had the land, it got the support of the city. Now, that's a very telling statistic, and that goes back to 30 some odd years I've been here. I think that's a credible history and a credible record. We can always do more and we can always do better. But I'm proud of what we've done in the city of Sonoma in this regard. And I hope that we'd start to generate enough money in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund going forward, which is a city council decision. It's not our purview and it doesn't end up in the housing element. If we truly beef up the kind of money that goes into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, if $2 or $3 million a year were going in there from predictable revenues, we could once again begin to use our bonding authority, issue bonds, and really do some substantial and wonderful projects. But that's what it's going to take, and it's going to take a while to get there. Okay, that felt better. At this point, unless there are other comments or questions, I'm ready for a motion.
Through the chair, I would just like to recommend that the motion include the adoption of the ordinance or of the resolution that's included, because that was not listed on the in the staff report.
Thank you. Mr. Willers?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the City Council the adoption of the City of Sonoma 6th Cycle Housing Plan, background report, sequent notice of exemption, and resolution as included in our packet.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we're ready for the vote.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes.
Commissioner Willers.
Yes.
Commissioner Wyrick.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barbos.
Yes.
And Chair Barnett.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right. This concludes the formal business of the night. Are there any commission member comments? Yes, Ms. O'Neill?
I believe this might be Wendy's last planning commission meeting.
That's right.
So I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you. Even well before I was on the planning commission, you were always such a great resource for me, and I appreciate that. And I look forward to connecting with you in Napa, and also just want to wish you all the best and thank you for everything you've done for us.
Thank you.
And I will join in appreciation for all your hard work and all your years. And hope that you really love your new job and not having to get in your car and commute to work anymore.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, for all of your service to the citizens of Sonoma and helping, people stumble through projects that they've had and hopefully, giving them good direction. And I know you've given me good direction and all the legwork you've done for us on the commission. Thank you for your service. It's very much appreciated, and good luck in future pursuits.
Thank you.
Wendy, I'd like to say thanks as well with your support during my commission forays, as well as on the other side of in my private practice. And good luck in Napa. I'll probably see you there.
Great. I look forward to it. It was my pleasure.
And lastly, I just want to chime in and ditto what everyone else said. We're going to miss you and your positive attitude that you bring to your job.
Thank you.
And I'm going to miss your hairstyles.
Which one?
the variety. I love it.
That's it, exactly. All right, there being no other business, I'd like to hear a motion. Oh, yes?
One other question, and I'm not sure who this is for, but what is the status of the applicants for the Planning Commission?
So for my understanding, on January 23rd, the council will be reviewing and selecting commission. Either if there's a vacancy in the commission, they would be recommending that, or appointing a commissioner. And there's some actually new commissions, like the Climate Action Commission, and that will be newly appointed. So on the 23rd, we should hear more as well. And I just wanted to add too that I've really appreciated Wendy being here and helping me get acclimated, and I really appreciate that. And we will definitely miss her. And all her expertise in everything from GIS to the new online permitting system to, she was instrumental in getting that up and running, and just all the work that she's done behind the scenes. So thank you.
Okay. With that, I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Thank you very much.
Like a printed version? Is that what you're thinking? I think probably what we should do is talk to Wendy. We don't have, I think there were hard copies that were available.